Jesse Jackson. This luncheon is meant to celebrate the international work of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and you will see that from the speakers that will be coming to give their remarks and also in appreciation of Reverend Jackson. I've been working for Reverend Jackson for the last 24 years, and we have traveled all over the globe promoting human rights, unity, diversity, and also conflict resolution. And we want to appreciate Reverend Jackson in all that he did and continue to do to this day. So to get us started, I want to call upon Reverend Todd Urey to do an opening prayers.
If we could just, if we can get a little more volume on the mic and just still ourselves in the room. Center ourselves for the importance of this moment. And to honor God for the privilege of being able to bear witness to this milestone that is the pivoting of Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. He's pivoting because he still is pivotal, essential to the work that must be done. And by his voice, he has convened us here to be able to sit at the table with one another. If you would do me a favor just to make sure we're going to be in a space of prayer, can you just speak to the folks at your table and say, I see the world in you. I see the world in you. I may not be able to see the world with you, but I can see the world in you. And so we gather as peoples of the world at this hour. Shall we look to the creator of the world, who holds the whole world in his hands, and pray together at this hour? Shall we bow? God, how we marvel at your goodness, the orchestration of your hand, your providence and your will, that you hold us in the palm of your hand. You've sent us a prophet named Jesse, who again convenes us by his voice and his sense of moral compass to allow us to have a conversation not merely about what once was, but what must be. We thank you for his wisdom that he has now passed the mantle, as Elijah did with Elisha. So does Jesse do with Frederick. We thank you for Reverend Jackson and Dr. Haynes and for all of these assembled. And as we sit at table and we see the world in each other's eyes, may we celebrate that you've convened us because you have the whole world in your hands. Now as we break bread together, let the food strengthen our bodies. Let the conversation encourage our hearts. And may we ever be mindful that we who sit in privileged places have an important responsibility. For to whom much is given, much is required. Help us to rise to this moment and give you glory in our service. We thank you for those who share and those who serve this day. In your matchless universal name we do pray. And all would say, amen.
Thank you, Reverend Urey. And I now want to call upon a great friend and family member of the Rainbow Push Coalition, who has been very active in supporting the organization in whenever he is called on. He's a community organizer within Chicago, and he's also a very supportive and instrumental in terms of bringing the diaspora together. And this is Dr. Iwa Iwa, who was our 2022 recipient of the International Humanitarian Award. Dr. Iwa Iwa, to give us open greetings.
Thank you. As I have already been introduced, I want to make it very clear to you all that my name is Bond, James Bond. Our most truthful and worthy king of Africa, Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr., we appreciate you and thank you very much for what you have done throughout the existence of man and your own birthright. I've been advised to speak for only 4 hours, but I want to make sure that our new leader, the new executive director of the Operation Push, is here today with us. As he said yesterday, we are going to be following on the shoulders of Reverend Jesse Jackson. For my African brothers and sisters, His Excellencies, and the most distinguished gentlemen and women who have been here for the past 3 days, you are welcome to the city of Chicago. I have served as the Chief Financial Officer for the state for the past 17 years. I recognize that the work is still to be done, and under the auspices of the Rainbow Push Coalition, we are going to do it. And I can guarantee you the Reverend is still here, and he will be here for the rest of our lives. On behalf of the African community, my brother, James Gomez, who has been instrumental in getting these things done, I thank you so much, and hopefully, in the next 40 years, as the Reverend leaves, we will be able to continue his legacy. Thank you very much, and welcome to Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iwa. I want to urge all of you to give a big welcome to our new president, Reverend Freddie Haynes. And I also want to recognize some of our special guests, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, flown all the way from South Africa to be with us here today. Her Excellency F.C. Tambulba, former Vice President of Costa Rica. Of course, the one and only, and the first Afro-Colombian to be the Ambassador of Colombia to the United States, Ambassador Luis. And the Honorable former Minister from Ghana, and of course, Mr. Jallo and Dr. Jallo from Senegal and Gambia, Sweden, respectively, and our international delegation from South Africa, from Senegal, from Nigeria, from Colombia, and all across the world. All protocol observed. As you heard, those who were fortunate enough to be at the session this morning, you have a small story about the impact of Reverend Jackson across the world. I have traveled with him all over the globe, and I've seen him convince warring parties to take the path of peace, and I've seen him convince leaders to set the captives free in Syria, Cuba, Iraq, Africa, in Colombia, just to name a few across the world. And he also advocated for racial justice across the globe. And One, and one very person who have a special story to tell is Mr. Honorable Mamadou Jallo from Sweden. And please help me in welcoming Mr. Jallo.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Jackson, Reverend Haynes, Rainbow Push Coalition, the delegation from Colombia. We all protocols observed. I'm honored to be here. I think this is maybe the 10th time that I've attended the Rainbow Push Coalition Convention. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, the reason why I am who I am today. And it's important that when I heard that Reverend Jesse Jackson is being bestowed of the highest civilian honor by the Colombian government, I felt there is no person who is more deserving than Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jesse Jackson, as my brother James mentioned here, has traveled the world and defended human rights all around the globe. Reverend Jesse Jackson has freed prisoners of war. Reverend Jesse Jackson went to my own country, Gambia, where I was born and raised, and freed prisoners who were facing life imprisonment and death penalty. It is only Reverend Jackson that can do that. We have leaders all around the world try to solve conflicts, do everything possible, and they would not be able to solve it. And who they would turn to is Reverend Jackson, and Reverend Jackson would fly, and the conflict would be resolved. That is the work of God. It's the work of God. Now, I want to thank you, Reverend Jackson, for your lifelong commitment to justice, freedom, and civil and human rights. In the previous panel that I sat, I tried to give a testimony of why I would forever be grateful to Reverend Jackson. I did not go into details to explain exactly what happened, but allow me just to take a few minutes to tell you why it is important for that testimony to be heard. Because if I don't speak about it, people will not know about it. And it's better for me to speak about it in front of Reverend Jackson so he can hear how grateful I am today and the difference that his work has done for me and thousands of other people of African descent, not only in Sweden, but around the world. But about 11 years ago, in Sweden, those of you that know Sweden, it's a white country. It's not like here, it's a lot of white people. And so when you live in Sweden and you come to the United States and you see people of color around you, it's like heaven, because that's not what we used to. Now, in the United States, in Sweden, one of the most important universities had a party. And at this party, they had a theme, and the theme was jungle. And the students, who are white students, of course, decided to dress up as enslaved Africans. White students painted themselves black, with black face, and had chains around their necks and their arms, and they went to this party, and that was supposed to be representing the theme jungle at one of the most prestigious universities in Sweden. And I had another white person that was the slave master that took them by the chain into the party. And in the middle of the party, they had a big table, and they put this so-called enslaved black people or white people in blackface on the table, and they had an auction, a mock auction, where white people were bidding to buy these white people that painted themselves black and were supposed to be enslaved Africans. Just imagine that for a minute. at an institution of higher learning. Now, I got to know this because I was an American student at that particular university who was in shock. And that person contacted me and told me about the incident. And of course, I filed a complaint, just like I'm supposed to do. And when I filed a complaint, all hell broke loose. Because people are like, you as a black person, of course, they would not use the term black person or African. They would just use the term the N-word. You come to our country and you want to tell us and our higher institutions how to behave. And that resulted in me being portrayed as an enslaved African. Again, they don't use the term African. Put a picture of my face in an enslaved man, African man, body, with chains around my neck and my arms, with the title, "This is a runaway nigger slave. And if you should find him, please call a number." And they put a number, and you would be given a reward. And this picture was put around the entire city that I live and the neighboring cities that I live in. And people could see this, and of course they were shocked. It was put at the time I was working at the university campus. So the students saw it and they contacted me, and I reacted. And when I reacted, all hell broke loose again. Why would you get angry? You are a nigger and you are a slave, and you are happy. You should be happy you live in this country where we don't lynch you, where we don't enslave you, and if you're not happy, just leave. Now, being the person that I am, I refuse to accept that. And I fought back. And the prosecutor says, this is not a crime. This is freedom of expression. And then I reached to Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Reverend Jesse Jackson did not hesitate to take the flight from the United States to Sweden. And you know, if a giant like Reverend Jesse Jackson comes to a small country like Sweden, everything changes. When he arrived in Sweden, every single newspaper had his face on their newspapers. The first page saying the civil rights giant is here to tell the Swedish government to stop the racism that is being perpetuated on people of African descent. And Reverend Jesse Jackson did not only do that, speak to media, who went to the university that I walked to, who went to the university that did this incident and told them what was wrong about it. He spoke to the ministers that are involved. He spoke to the government about it that are involved. He made sure that I grew several inches because I was standing on his shoulders. And all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, a young man whose words were not significant to the Swedish society became a giant standing on the shoulders of an icon. And that inspiration is something that I'm forever grateful, because now, because of Reverend Jesse Jackson, I am a member of the highest decision-making institution in Sweden as the only black man. And not only that, I am elected as a first person of African descent who chairs a standing committee in the 100-year democracy history in Sweden. The first person. And again, that is because he is. I am because you are, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I'm forever grateful. Forever grateful. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, to thank Rainbow Push Coalition, and also the new leader of Rainbow Push Coalition, that you have a legacy to protect. And this legacy does not only end within the boundaries of the United States of America. This is a global legacy, and we are behind you 100%. We're going to support you. We're going to do everything possible to make sure that legacy continues. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say these few words. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Jallo. And what you just heard here is just a small portion of Reverend's impact across the globe. And Reverend will be forever grateful for your work and your service to serve humanity. I always introduce people as a friend of Reverend Jackson. We're all friends of Reverend Jackson. But there are some special, I don't mean to demean anybody's relationship with Reverend Jackson, but there are some special friends of Reverend Jackson. And I want to call upon Reverend's friend, Dr. Jibril Jallo, who have worked in all the departments in the United Nations, and he is continuing to do that in terms of bringing the diaspora together and also amplifying the legacy of Reverend Jackson. Brother Jibril Jallo.
I'll just make them as presentations. Good afternoon. My name is Jibril Diallo. My country of origin is Senegal. After 38 years at the United Nations, I'm leading an organization called the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, headquartered in New York, whose main task is to strengthen the ties between Africa and the diaspora, conducting a major program for the United Nations to popularize the Sustainable Development Goals in Africa and in the diaspora. One of the lessons that we have learned having lunches is that when you have the floor, do a favor to those who are having lunch and be as brief as you can so that people can get on with their lunches. So I'll be as brief as I can because I've had the honor of growing up under the shadow of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who I've had the honor of meeting in 1984 when I was Information Officer for Africa for the United Nations Development Program. So I will briefly illustrate that relationship at 3 levels. 1, the work that Reverend Jesse Jackson has done to make sure that he brings Africa to the world and brings Africa to the world and brings the world to Africa. Number 2, his work in terms of strengthening the ties with the diaspora. And then number 3, Reverend Jesse Jackson as the global leader through the work that he has done with the United Nations. For that, I have 3 photographs, which I brought all the way from Senegal, that Reverend Jackson may not even remember. Hold this microphone. This photograph here was in October 1992, when the Organization of African Unity asked Reverend Jesse Jackson to come and lead a committee to look at the conditions about how to deal with issues of reparations. During the summit of the Organization of African Unity. And in this photograph, you have former president of Nigeria, Ibrahim Babangida, and the Yusuf family. So that's the strengthening of the ties with Africa as photo number 1. This photograph was in 1992 on Gorée Island. Gorée Island is the last place of land that the slaves touched before being sent around the world. So in this photograph, you have Reverend Jesse Jackson holding the chains that our people were chained on to be taken to the Americas. And Reverend Jackson always takes his family with him. So you have the 2 sons of Reverend Jesse Jackson also here present on Gorée Island. The Pope, several heads of state came on Gorée Island and asked for forgiveness to humanity for the cruelty that was done to
the Africans and people of African descent. So the curator of Gorée Island is called Mr. Joseph Njai. He has passed away since. He's one of the most famous persons who has dramatized the suffering of our people. And Reverend Jeffrey Jackson was asked to come and see how we can use this as a basis in order to lay down the conditions for dealing with the issue of reparations globally. The third and final photograph is here. This is Reverend Jesse Jackson at the United Nations headquarters in New York, when in 2008, with the former president of Senegal, former President Abdoulaye Wade, he launched the World Festival of Arts and Cultures that was ultimately to be held in Senegal. So when you have those three dimensions, which I will present to the Reverend in a moment, then the way forward is that there are issues which are important because important people are paying attention to them. And one issue that we've been driving very hard on and which we need to continue to work on is the issue of violence and discrimination against women and girls. The United Nations has determined that no country in the world treats its women as well as it does its men. So we have to end the apartheid of gender as forcefully as we fought apartheid in South Africa. So to do that, what better than to use the convening powers of sports and culture? Sport is a universal language. Culture is a universal language. When the teams win, no matter what your economic background, no matter what ethnic groups you belong to, everybody unites. So we decided that what a better figure than to use the convening powers of sport to give a red card to all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. In football, soccer in the United States, when you give a red card, what happens? When you give a red card to a player in soccer, what happens? They're expelled. Why? Because they've had a serious infringement to the rules of football. So that is why discrimination and violence against women and girls is a violation of the rules of society. We're doing it with FIFA. I've been invited to join the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia in mid-August and with the United Nations system. So do me a favor, those of you who have got your cell phones, take your cell phones, please, and go to www.redcardpledge.com and sign your engagement for zero tolerance to all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. We need to have 1 million signatures by the year 2030, which is the year of the Sustainable Development Goals. With that, I will have the honor and the pleasure of presenting these photographs to Reverend Jesse Jackson now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo, for reminding us the historic link that Reverend Jackson have with the continent of Africa and the diaspora. And I want to call upon our acting executive director, Bishop Tavis Grant.
Would you help me appreciate our Executive Director of International Affairs, James Gomez? Please put your hands together. And while you're at it, let's celebrate him one more time, our founder and leader, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, and our new national president, Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes. I want to thank you on behalf of our national staff and our satellites and affiliates and chapters around the country. This has been an amazing convention, and we have a great deal of excitement and engagement. It would be remiss not to say happy birthday to Santita Jackson. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce, I want to make sure that the hashtag and the QR code that has all of our information for not just the rest of this day, but tomorrow is our business breakfast, faith leaders luncheon, and our labor dinner. And then we close out on Wednesday with the most amazing, phenomenal women's luncheon. And so we have a great convention in store for you. If there's anything that we can do for you, go to our website, www.rainbowpush.org, or text that word PUSH to 41444. Without further ado, the chair of the Rainbow Push Coalition Board, Attorney C.K. Hoffler.
Good afternoon. So I'll start by saying something that we all know, this expression. The struggle continues, but victory is certain. In Portuguese, a luta continua. Victoria es certa. But in Spanish, because we're being honored today, Reverend Jackson is being honored by a mighty, mighty country. And for that, he is so thankful. A lucha continua, la victoria es segura. And in French, because we know that we have our brother from Senegal who has been such an important part of our international efforts. La lutte continue. La victoire est certaine. And so I say this today because we are reminded that we're honoring our founder, Reverend Jackson, and we are also welcoming, we are pivoting, we have pivoted, Reverend has pivoted, and we are welcoming Dr. Freddie Haynes. And I'd like you to stand, Dr. Haynes, because you see, this is the international community. And we know that as you stand on the shoulders of our great founder and our leader in the international community, we know that you have a lot of work ahead of you. But the good news is, you take all of us with you because we understand a luta continua. Victoria es certa. Thank you.
Thank you, CK. And as you enjoy your meal, we want to show you a video highlights of Reverend international work.
France honors Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. with highest award, the Légion d'honneur, a brother to us.
Monsieur Jesse Jackson, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons commandeur de la Légion d'honneur.
When the hungry look up and see us coming trying to give them skill, somebody might say, who are they? We just people, unite.
Of course, Jackson is best known as a civil rights leader, but the role of third-party intermediary in hostage or prisoner negotiations is not new for him. It began in 1983 after then-Lieutenant Bobby Goodman was shot down over Lebanon and taken prisoner by Syria. Jackson went to Syria without the blessing of the Reagan administration.
President Reagan's office said, well, you shouldn't go. You don't know what you're doing, and you can only get him in harm's way.
The third party created a dynamic through which President Hafez al-Assad could release the American pilot and save face.
It allowed the Syrian government the opportunity to release me without having to succumb directly to the U.S. government.
Receiving both Goodman and Jackson at the White House, even a reluctant President Ronald Reagan was compelled to give Jackson credit, saying you can't quarrel with success.
Reverend Jackson, in our judgment, helped to enable a new generation of African Americans to serve.
Right.
This was the civil rights movement deciding that it was time to get involved in electoral politics, and Reverend Jackson was that vehicle for many of us to get involved.
But just because you're born in the slum does not mean the slum is born in you and you can rise above it. We must leave racial battleground and come to economic common ground and moral higher ground. America, our time has come, and come November there will be a change because our time has come.
In the high-profile case of U.S. soldiers captured in Kosovo, Jackson played a role in their release. And there are others, never acting as part of the government, just a human rights advocate.
The civil rights movement within our own country has moral authority.
Jackson intends to continue his unofficial diplomacy whenever his experience and place in the world fit the dynamic. Anyone who views him as self-gratifying gains little of Jackson's attention.
To gain the release of captives is gratifying. It's also risky. It's also the right thing to do.
Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it.
I was trying to carve out a lane of healing, or a lane of hope, a lane of reconstruction and revitalization. I wanted to try to pick up the broken pieces and connect them.
It's hard to imagine how we could have come as far as we have without the creative power, the keen intellect, the loving heart, and the relentless passion of Jesse Louis Jackson. And God isn't done with him yet.
He was born in Greenville, South Carolina, October the 8th, 1941. There's a hero if you look into your heart. You don't have to be afraid of what you are. There is an answer if you look into your soul. All of the sorrow that you feel will melt away. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on. And you cast your fear aside, 'cause you know you can survive. And when you feel all hope is gone, look inside you and be strong. And you'll finally know the truth, that a hero lies in you. Oh, yes, it does.
heaven. The brother getting ready. That's the bank. Get ready, you mother, on the big payback. Hey! Let me hit him, Fred, hit him. Hey, hey, hey! Lord! Lord!
He should be coming right now. Yeah, they were telling me that we can cut it short, but I don't know, it's too late to edit it. I don't know how you can edit it at this point. He needs to come. Huh? Leave it there. Okay. Hey, Cameron. What we can do is you can read while we're filming them off because we need to start.
So should I just be?
Yeah, I have to, we have a 1 minute video. All right, all right. I hope you have enjoyed your lunch. And we're now going to move on the second part of the luncheon, which is the highlight of the entire convention. This is a reflection of Reverend Jackson's relationship with the country of Colombia. And we have a video to show before we move on to the presentation. And I call upon, sure. And I call upon Brother Cameron Bonds to do the reading of the degree.
Whereas the national government has instituted the Order of San Carlos, with the purpose of honoring and exalting Colombian and foreign citizens who have distinguished themselves for their distinguished services to the country, especially in the field of international relations. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, is one of the most outstanding figures in the defense of civil, religious, and political rights in the United States. Born October the 8th, 1941 in Greenville, South Carolina, he graduated from Greenville Public Schools and enrolled at the University of Illinois on a soccer scholarship. He later transferred to North Carolina A&T State University and graduated in 1964. He then began his theological studies at Chicago Theological Seminary and was ordained a priest on June 30th, 1968 by Reverend Clay Evans, and earned a Master of Divinity degree from Chicago Theological Seminary in the year 2000. That it is noteworthy the human rights work that Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, has carried out. Since his student years in 1960 trying to desegregate the local Greenville Public Library. In 1965, he became a full-time organizer of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He was soon appointed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to direct the Operation Breadbasket program. In December 1971, Reverend Jackson founded Operation Push, People United to Serve Humanity, in Chicago, Illinois. In 1984, he founded the National Rainbow Coalition, a Washington, D.C.-based social justice organization dedicated to political empowerment, education, and public policy change. He has also been a two-time presidential candidate. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., founder and chairman of the Rainbow Push Coalition, worked hard when he served as special envoy of the President and Secretary of State for the promotion of democracy in Africa, a position to which he was appointed by President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and where he worked with national leaders on African issues. On the African continent, to ensure justice and equality. In this regard, President Bill Clinton awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, in 2000. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. has also been called the conscience of the nation, the great unifier, for his outstanding ability to unite people across differences of race, culture, class, gender, and belief, and who through his organization has promoted the defense of equity, the protection of human rights, the attention of business investment in underserved national communities, and the elimination of poverty. The Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. expressed his support for the peace process in Colombia and expressed his hope that the government's negotiations with the FARC would have a good ending. He expressed his hope that the government's negotiation of with the FARC would have a good ending. When there is reconciliation, there is always a political cost, but the cost of war is even greater. He said about the peace negotiations in Havana, that by virtue of the foregoing, and in accordance with the provisions of Article 9 of Decree 2397 of 1954, it is the desire of the national government to recognize the professional merits and personal virtues of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., who is an icon and international reference on his fundamental role in the movements and favor of autonomy, peace, civil rights, gender equality, and economic and social justice, with the purpose of generating opportunity for the less favored people and eliminating poverty, injustice, and racial segregation. That, in merit of the foregoing, decrees Article 1 to confer the Order of St. Charles in the degree of Grand Cross upon Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition.
I now call upon Ambassador Luis Morella Urito to do the imposition of the declaration.
Muchas gracias. I have all these messages from President Petro and Vice President Francia Marquez, but I will not read all of them. Everything was already said. This is a great moment for Colombia to have the honor of recognizing your long life achievement, Reverend Jesse Jackson. We are in Colombia grateful forever. The advancement of Colombia towards equality, opportunity, and representation of Afro-Colombians would not have been possible without the invaluable contribution of you, Reverend Jesse Jackson. We, all of us, our consul, who is Afro-Colombian, consul in Chicago, Igor, Epsi Campbell, who is here, Afro-Latina, Napoleon, all of us, we couldn't really be here in this position without your support. And as one of the most influential, the most African-American, you hold a special place in the heart of Colombians, particularly Afro-Colombians. You are an icon, a legend for us. And we all consider you as somebody with a Colombian heart. This is a recognition of your pivotal work in our country that has transformed what that once was to believe, to be impossible, to become reality. One example of that, we now elected, and is in position, the first, we call non-traditional, non-conventional, alternativo, President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, progressive, that is supported by a strong coalition of Afro-Colombian and indigenous people. And we have, for the first time in history, the first Afro-Colombian women vice president of the country, Francia Marquez, that she wanted to be here. And President Petro and Vice President Francia Marquez and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Álvaro Leiva, send you the highest regard. We also would like to recognize all your support to peace processes, not only one, in Colombia. You always help our country to move forward in deepening democracy and more opportunities for underserved, marginalized communities like Afro-Colombians. Having elected a vice president who is an Afro-Colombian woman, we considered that impossible a few years ago. Now it is possible, and that legacy of Colombian deepening democracy is your legacy. Let me say this. I consider that my story in relation to Reverend Jesse Jackson was the best one. International story of support and advice and counsel. But today I realize that it's not the best one. But I will share that with you. I was forced to flee Colombia, and Epsi Campbell, our first vice president in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, they call the XC effect. That's why we have now Francia Marquez too. So I thought that was the best one, but let's say this. I was forced to flee the country after being kidnapped with my family, and I was beaten up, and I went to Detroit very close. I have an uncle, so I was forced to flee the country. And then somebody told me, no, you have to be in Washington because you have to work in terms of doing advocacy for this not to happen to other people again. So not repeat itself. So I went to Washington. And in Washington, I met some students from Howard University. And I was exposed to the African diaspora. I was so fascinated looking at those students from different countries in Africa, from Africa and different countries from Latin America. It's like getting to know yourself through others. So then one student, PhD student, Randy Short, his name, he said, we need to talk to Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jesse Jackson said, that's impossible. Reverend Jesse Jackson said, yeah. And he said, I know James Gomez. Where's James? You know Randy, you remember. And he said, we can get an appointment. I went to talk to Reverend Jesse Jackson at Georgetown, the office you have there, Rainbow Post Coalition. For me, that was like the dream coming true. It's like, wow, I'm talking to Jesse Jackson. I was not so articulated in what I presented because I was so emotional, impressed. And he immediately said, how come I'm helping the president of Colombia to reach peace, to negotiate peace with FARC rebels, and he didn't tell me that you have those significant number of Afro-Colombians suffering? That was in the year 2000, 23 years ago. After that, everything changed. He said, you have to go to Chicago. He started working with us. He went to Colombia. Diallo's here, Jibril, that went with Reverend Jesse Jackson to Colombia to the first global summit of African and Afro-descendant leaders in Cali. And at that time, I asked Reverend Jesse Jackson, I need some advice. What is the most important thing I need to do? That was in 2013. I said, you know what, Luis? Keep the hope alive.
Right now.
Yeah.
All right now.
And how to do that? I said, keep the hope alive. And then I see him doing his exercise at the airport because I was the one like a company escorting him, and he said, well, he's doing his exercise. And then I asked, why are you doing this exercise now? I said, you know what? You have to keep also in good health. That's very important for good spirit. And then he said, find strategically what is the best way to present Afro-Colombian issues internationally. And we have some achievement. Putting this in context, we as Afro-Colombians, based on our struggle and as a result of our struggle, we were granted the rights for being recognized as particular ethnic group with particular rights as a racial group just in 1991. The abolition of slavery was in Colombia in 1852, was in force, in 1851 and then in force in 1852, before the US. And we were in complete invisibility just in 1991, 32 years ago. It's very young. So after we made this connection and we worked together with African-American leaders that you, Reverend Jesse Jackson, introduced many of them to us, after we start working with the Congressional Black Caucus, with members of Congress like Bobby Rush was here, Danny Davis, Jesse Jackson Jr., a lot of work with him. We worked with Gregory Mix many times going to Colombia, and some others. The Afro-Colombian story have this like before and after we made alliances with African-American and African leadership. So we need to work together as you, Reverend Jesse Jackson, have taught us. So we are grateful forever. President Petro and Vice President Francia Marquez immediately I got here as the first Afro-Colombian ambassador to the United States, said we need to recognize the contribution of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And let me finish with this. I was in Bogota in the inauguration because President Petro and Vice President Francia Marquez invited Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I met Jonathan Jackson. And I saw this guy said, I know your dad. He helped me out. He said, like, and how come? I told him the story. And he said, but then many people there said that they know you and you helped them. And Jonathan was very impressed with that. And then I told the entire story. I said, this legacy you have in Francia, Marquez and Gustavo Petro taking oath today is a legacy of your dad too. So thanks to your dad. And he went in tears in the middle of this. So there is many stories like this. I thought that was the best, but it's not, it's yours. But there's many stories like this that need to be told. And this is why Colombian government, led by President Gustavo Petro and Vice President Francia Marquez, and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Álvaro Leiva, wanted to really recognize you with the highest civilian award for Colombian or international person for your understanding leadership. You are the person who really provides inspiration to us. Thank you very much.
Reverend Jackson will say some brief words, and then Reverend Freddie Haynes will also say some brief words.
Mr. President, thanks you for such a always giving recognition of our work in Colombia. Violence is the absence of noise. Peace is the presence of justice. Peace is more difficult than silence. There's anything about it. Well, first, my grandson, Yusef, where boy? Come here. Yusef. Yeah. Come on up here, boy. Where's Ashley? Ashley? Where you out there hiding someplace?
Ashley?
Mr. President, thanks to all of you for such awesome lunch. And I want to say to you that Reverend Haynes is part of this job, learning how to beg, international begging. I want to just see you, my friends. I was planning went to Sweden. I heard this poor black boy was being called nigger and all kinds of names. But we had to pay for those airplane tickets. You who are here today support the rainbow. I have a rainbow membership in your card, in your pocket. But we're in our pen, where we are in the world. Reason why people are coming across the border in such great numbers because of our Latin American policy. We invested there. People would rather stay home. Walk from Chicago to Denver, 1,000 miles through the bushes, and lose lives all along the way. But somehow Africa's out of the democratic demand, and Latin America does not have a policy. Economic development, we share 2,000 miles of border with Mexico. One side is parched earth, one side is green grass. People come across the green grass. The human rights to do so. I want to say, President, thanks to you tonight, and the night we have our Shakespeare banquet. To come to tonight, my friends. And those of you who want to support this luncheon, some money, some pesos, please leave it on the table or give it to somebody. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Vincent Harding raised the question, do you want to be free or do you want everyone to be free? Martin King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Both truths have been embodied, incarnated powerfully by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. He has not limited his gospel to being provincial or parochial, but instead he has covered this planet. And so no wonder we celebrate today an international icon, a global genius and giant. And so yes, he came from Greenville, South Carolina, but imagine that, from Greenville to covering the whole globe. We salute Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., and we salute Columbia and all of the diaspora for recognizing the genius and greatness of Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. Now we got to keep hope alive because he started something, and since he started it, we're going to keep it going. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. Long live his liberating global legacy. And happy birthday, Santita.
Birthday, dear Santita. Happy birthday to you. Let's say it again. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Louder. Happy birthday, Santita. Happy birthday to you.
I would say something. And some present from Chocó, the black communities in Colombia, bordering Panama. You talk about migration, the Darien Gap. So this is from those communities and from the coffee region. So they are doing chocolate and coffee, black communities. So that's for you.
You guys need to help Reverend down. Thank you so much.
Okay. There's an award. Ladies and gentlemen, let us celebrate Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson one more time. Please put your hands together and celebrate. And our executive director, James Gomez. We're going to make pictures available just momentarily. Allow us to transition. Okay.
We just need a picture of the ambassador and Reverend. Okay. Reverend, just you and the ambassador.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Please do not forget that we have some amazing workshops as it relates to education in the Friedman Room on the 3rd floor. Friedman Room on the 3rd floor on education and school board elections. It is so important that we are in the game to ensure the education of our children. So please make sure that you are a part of these vital workshops on the 3rd floor in the Friedman Room. Thank you.
And also tonight we have the Push XL Education Banquet at 6 o'clock, and all of you are invited for free. So you have no excuse not to show up. It's going to be in the same room. And at 6 o'clock, we have one more activity to conclude the luncheon. One of our honorees this year is Mr. Calvin Johnson, supervisor Rich Township. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Jordan, sorry, Calvin Jordan. Oh. Okay, just give me a minute. Oh, he's receiving out here. Mr. Calvin Jordan. That's the award there. Can you take it? Who's here? Please bear with us. We're almost done. We also have a special presentation from Howard University. Please help us in welcoming Mr. Calvin Jordan. We thank you for everything that you do and continue to do. Thank you so much.
First of all, I know we're in closing, but it is indeed an honor to not only receive this award, but it's indeed an honor to be here with such a trailblazer. I'm who and what I am today because of a Reverend Jesse Jackson. I have been affiliated with PUSH for almost 50 years, and I can add another 10 to that, but my life is much better because of my involvement in being with Operation PUSH. So as we close, we thank Reverend Jackson for his tireless effort and what he has done for this entire country. And we love you, Reverend Jackson. Thank you.
Once again, the sport banquet is going to be in this room at 6 o'clock, and it's free. And finally, we have a presentation from Howard University to the Ambassador of Colombia, and I have our good sister, Mr. Marilyn Foucault, to present the award.
Well, good afternoon. On the 30th of March of this year, Howard University organized the 27th Annual Women Ambassadors Conference. And Howard University, noticing the transformation of the Embassy of Colombia from an embassy that was completely white, where you could not find a single black person, to an embassy that is embracing of all, and an embassy that celebrates the Afro-Colombian culture and Afro-Colombian business and Afro-Colombian everything. So Howard University and the Women Ambassadors Foundation present this award of Distinguished Ambassador of the Year to Ambassador Murillo.
We want to thank you so very much. Would you give yourselves a round of applause this afternoon? Want to make sure our PUSH Excel Scholarship and Sports Banquet this afternoon, this evening at 6 p.m. We have amazing workshops going on from 2:30 to 4:30 all over the facility. You can go and scan the schedule now on the third floor in the Friedman Theater. Want to make sure that you follow us at www.rainbowpush.org, and don't forget to text the word PUSH to 41444. All of our content is on all of our platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and subscribe to that channel.
We also want to thank all of you who make this event possible. Brother Jefferson and Brother Brian, who is here representing Vivian Redding from South Africa, and all of you who have purchased tickets, because you know that your contribution is what helps this organization move forward, and we continue to look forward for your support. Thank you so much, and have a best day. And there will be sessions going on the third floor, and 6 o'clock again, the dinner is here, the sport banquet, and it's free. It's one of the highlights of the convention.
She
Let's do it tonight here. Reverend have to run to something.
Okay. Okay.